Welcome to Man in America. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse, and a big Happy New Year's to you. So, coming to you live on New Year's Day. I hope you had a wonderful holiday. I hope you had a very Merry Christmas and a wonderful New Year. I spent my New Year sleeping. I was in bed well before midnight, which I think is just what happens when you're a dad of a 10-month-old and a 4-year-old that just wear you out nonstop. But I hope you had a good time and spent it with family. And there's a lot to just talk about. There's a lot, looking forward into next year. I'm not sure about you, but for me, naturally at this time of year, I'm spending a lot of time reflecting. What was this past year like? What were the goals I set at the beginning of the year? And was I able to achieve those goals? And actually, I set a lot of goals at the beginning of last year. And I'm happy to report to you that I actually achieved a lot of the goals that I set. And so right now, Kate, my wife, and I were going through a process of setting all of our goals up for the next year, the next 3 years, the next 5 years. And we've got big plans. We have big plans, big goals, a lot of it centered around what we're doing with Man in America. We're also going to be launching a new channel which I'll be giving you more information as the year kind of continues on, but giving you a lot more access into our life, our homesteading, life, homeschooling our children, animals, cooking, living naturally, all the different things that we do to keep our family healthy in a world that is constantly trying to kill us. I mean, dumping things from the skies, putting poisons in our food, all that stuff. But we're focused on how to escape it. And so we're going to be documenting all that and sharing it with you. But getting into tonight's show, which is really a look at what are the what do I think are the key stories of 2025? Now, obviously, I have no idea what can happen. I mean, there could be another massive hurricane. There could be a huge terrorist attack. There could be peace, world peace. There could be doves flying everywhere as world leaders hug in unison. I mean, you never know. But what I'm going to do though is just give you, what I'm going to be focused on. If you were to ask you, Seth, hey, what are 5 or 6 of the most important things that you're going to be focused on through 2020? That's what this is. But before we jump in, I have a quick message for you. Look, folks, I want you to do exercise with me here. So close your eyes. Imagine a future where your wealth is untouchable, a future where every decision you make today creates a foundation of security for tomorrow. Right now, optimism fills the air. A new chapter under Trump is beginning, and opportunities seem endless. Markets are climbing, spirits are high, but beneath the surface, whispers of change grow louder. Policies, tariffs, and global shifts are shaping a new economic landscape. The dollar holds strong to a certain degree, but what happens when it doesn't? What happens when the Brics nations are successful in their de-dollarization? When they turn away from the familiar? Okay, and what happens when they turn towards the uncertain? So gold is different. So for centuries, gold has been the anchor in times of change. It's been a hedge against inflation, a shield against volatility, a sanctuary when the world feels unsteady. Gold and silver don't follow the tides. They remain steadfast, unyielding, and enduring. Close your eyes and imagine your wealth secure. Imagine your future unshaken. This is the promise of gold and silver, tangible investments free from the whims of politics and markets. The time to act is now. While optimism reigns and markets soar, remember that true wisdom comes from preparing for what others cannot see. So gold and silver aren't just an investment, it's an anchor, it's your protection, it's your legacy. So folks, take your first step towards securing your future. And there's no better company to work with than Noble Gold. Protect your future by acting now. Call 626-654-1906 or visit goldwithseth.com to get your free gold and silver investment. Again, that's 626-654-1906 or goldwithseth.com. All right, so folks, jumping into the stories. So I first want to start with my probably say number one prediction for life in America. And that's, I'll keep that with, kind of in keeping with the overall theme of tonight's show is I'm really looking at this through the lens of being a man in America and looking at what are the things that matter to Americans? Obviously, we have certain things like Middle Eastern conflict or potential World War III. There are international things that affect life in America, and I'll be touching on those. But I'm looking at this through the viewpoint of this being in America. And unfortunately, if I had to give one word for my prediction in 2025 here in America, it's chaos. Chaos. Unfortunately, and this is what I see coming down the pipeline. And what we talking about what just happened with this terrorist attack in New Orleans with the guy that looks like, what we get into, supposedly looks like he's an ISIS guy that drove this electric pickup truck, through a very crowded street in New Orleans, killed, I forget, I'm not sure the number's up to, it's well over 10, injured a bunch more. We had a cyber truck basically bomb go off in front of, I think it was the Trump Hotel in Vegas. And these are just a few of the beginnings, I would say. And this is just this is the first day of the year. And so I'm going to be honing on why I think why my word is chaos. I mean, obviously we got the Trump inauguration coming up. We have Trump's first year, kind of stepping into office. I have a lot of hopes for that, and which I'll get into in tonight's show. But um, I think that we're going to see the deep state playing a lot of its hand. They are backed into a corner, and they are getting more and more desperate. And I think that the thing that makes them most desperate is the Great Awakening. It is the awakening of you and me and our friends and our family that we've talked to. And this is the greatest threat to the deep state, to the cabal, whatever you want to refer to them as. And I'll be kind of getting into the Great Awakening towards the end of the show, which I think you're going to make sure you want to tune into that. But chaos is I think that unfortunately what America is going to be experiencing. I mean, just looking at the border, looking at all of these military aged Chinese, military aged men coming from the Middle East, coming from South America, the Venezuelan gangs, the cartels. I mean, we've had 4 years of, basically like leaving your front door, not just unlocked, but open, living in one of the most dangerous suburbs of Chicago, for instance. Like we've had 4 years of that where any criminal just kind of walks right in, and whether they steal and screw something up or this kind of, lying in wait until the right time to attack. My concern is that we're going to be seeing a lot more chaos on American soil. Now, could we get into some sort of conflict with China or Russia? I mean, that's always on the table from my perspective, but we may not have to see Russian ships off the coast or Chinese ships off the coast because like the CCP, they've got a massive army that is just sitting in America right now waiting for orders. It's what you call a fifth column. And it's not just the Chinese, it's the cartels, it's the gang members. And so my concern is that the open border and what they've allowed to kind of people to come in, it has been one of their safeguards against Trump, is to let Trump step into office, but then create so much chaos that America is barely held together. And if you follow predictions from Martin Armstrong, one of my favorite guests, what he's seeing is that he thinks by 2030, 2031, 2032, that basically every government in the world will have collapsed by then, and that there's going to be what he describes as a civil war, but it's a global civil war. It's happening in each individual nation of the people overthrowing the corrupt governments. Could we get there? I don't know. I mean, a lot of the markings are there for it, but let's go. I just want to hone in a little bit because this is such breaking news and talk about what happened in New Orleans, but also how that fits the bigger picture. So I've got here's an interesting article I want to read to you by Michael Hoffman, who, to say the least, is a really interesting guy. He's got a very independent perspective. He's what you would refer to as a World War II revisionist. I mean, he doesn't really agree with a lot of the narratives of World War II. And hey, I've done my research too. I've watched a lot of the same documentaries you have too, and I've got my opinions. And for now, I keep those a little more quiet. But getting into Michael Hoffman, though, this is a recent article he just published today called "The Slaughter in New Orleans." He says a bad moon has risen over the United States of America at the beginning of the new year, resulting in a slaughter of civilians and a postponement of one of America's premier mass spectacle Roman Coliseum type games, the college football Sugar Bowl. The supreme Coliseum spectacle of them all, the Sugar Bowl, is scheduled to take place February 9th at the aptly named Caesars Superdome, roughly 1.5 miles from the site of today's massacre. Now, also, I'm not sure if you saw this, but lightning hit the U.S. Capitol, um, and then almost immediately hit the Washington Monument, which he mentions that in here as well. We talk about. He says, so on December 31st, New Year's Eve, lightning struck the U.S. Capitol building and the Masonic Washington Monument. Nearly 11 hours later, the terrorist attack in the New Orleans, the Crescent City, occurred on January 1st, today, around 4:15 a.m. So FBI Houston press release says, in collaboration with the Harris County Sheriff's Office, the FBI conducted an investigation near the intersection. The operation was connected to the morning's terrorist attack in New Orleans. He goes into some of the details of that specific, like the location and maybe some of the meanings behind it. But he says many questions remain in any rush to judgment concerning the alleged suspect, Shamsuddin Jabbar, impedes the acquisition of investigative knowledge independent of establishment sources. So he kind of goes into the different assertions about this. But he says, at this point in time, in my opinion, the only ones who can speak with authority on the tragedy in New Orleans are the conspirators themselves and the masters who pulled the strings of these puppets. If indeed the alleged attacker was manipulated or programmed to attack, he says, I do not rule out any possibility, including that he or she may actually have been the sole perpetrator or the so-called lone nut. So he gets into a few other things, into kind of just the various kind of oddities that are happening around this. But basically, he goes into ISIS and talking about ISIS here and the tie, because let's take a look at the attacker, right? So this is the let's see, this is the guy. Sorry, this ad popped up. Don't want that. So here's the guy, right? So he was obviously they're calling him a terrorist, but he's a U.S. citizen, right? He was born and raised in Texas, I believe. So it says, inside terrorist Shamsuddin Jabbar's squalid home where sheep and goats roam his yard after his financial ruin. So this is the guy right here. So he says, the terrorist who killed 15 people when he plowed his truck down crowded Bourbon Street in New Orleans was an American-born military veteran who was living in a rundown trailer park where he kept sheep and goats in the yard just blocks away from the local mosque. Authorities say that Jabbar, 42, from Houston, had an ISIS flag strapped to the rented Ford F-150 Lightning EV truck he used to carry out an act of premeditated terror on New Year's Day, which I guess, 4:15 a.m. is this morning. Here's his trailer he lives in. I guess he's got like some goats running around. And look, I've got no problem with sheep and goats. I mean, we'll be getting some, I think, in the spring for our house, but that's a different story. So anyway, there's the guy again. And I won't go much more into detail about his background and everything, but what the kind of more official narrative about this is that it looks like it was some sort of terrorist attack, ISIS attack. Now, I want to call attention to Laura Logan, who spent a lot of time in the Middle East reporting on these types of attacks, reporting on ISIS, on terror cells over there. So she says something really important here. She says, I learned months ago from multiple U.S. intel sources that the CIA was urging their friends in the Taliban Haqqani terror network to use their sleeper cells inside the U.S. for an attack that will be blamed on ISIS. So I'm very skeptical. It is too easy to blame ISIS. They do it over and over to hide the fact that powerful people inside American intel agencies are in bed with this nation's enemies. And I have to say that of all the different narratives I've seen, I agree with what Laura's saying here. It's unfortunate that this is the case, but basically what she's saying is that months ago, she's been hearing from multiple U.S. intel sources that the CIA was urging their friends or contacts in the Taliban, terrorist networks to use their sleeper cells inside the U.S. for an attack that would be blamed on ISIS. So to me, it just, again, she says it's too easy to blame ISIS. I mean, I agree that, look, we know, okay, look at this, the fact that the FBI, I don't know for sure, but they probably have been following this guy for some time, as we see with whether it's, the mass shootings or terrorist attacks in America. It's like, oh, it just so happens to be that the FBI was following this person for months, but they didn't do anything about it, and maybe they let them carry this out. But then what we also learn, and what I believe, is that oftentimes it's the FBI or the CIA that are training these people that are part of the overall plan, because these are agencies. I'm not saying everyone in the agencies is evil and bad, but we've seen over and over again, and I've interviewed, CIA whistleblowers and FBI whistleblowers, and what we see though is that these are agencies that have some very evil people within them that are using the power and influence and immunity of these agencies to carry out war on the American people. That these agencies are being used by some sort of global communist deep state to bring down America. And so this is even more frightening than the idea of some terrorists, coming across the border and just launching an attack. I mean, this guy was, he was, a citizen of America. Now, it seems like he had, been, kind of follower of Islam, and maybe some ties potentially to ISIS, and he was living close to the mosque. But again, these things could all be set up. I also know that there have been a lot of instances. I'd be curious to see what kind of meds this guy was on, because it seems like one of the other themes that you see oftentimes with mass shooters or people who carry out these kinds of attacks is that they're on heavy psychiatric meds, meds for depression or suicidal thoughts or whatever it is. And it's my research has led me to the place of believing that a lot of these psych meds make people very easy to be controlled, whether it's through voice of God technology, which is, I can bring up the patents. You can look it up. Just look up voice of God technology patent, which is the technology used to basically put voices in people's heads. I know people have been targeted with this. Like literally, people could be in their home and they could be targeted by some of this technology to drive them insane. I think it was the Fort Hood shooter? I think it was another military person that was hearing voices in his head that was on psychiatric meds. So again, this is very preliminary. I'm not jumping to any conclusions, just saying what my hunch is my hunch is that this guy was just a fall guy. He's a patsy. He's someone that was probably struggling in life, which we know that he was through multiple divorces and had, financial issues, and was living in a trailer park surrounded by goats and sheep. But maybe he was a prime suspect for some sort of MK Ultra operation where he was a Manchurian candidate type person, and he was activated and then used to carry out this mass attack. Now, it could be that he was just a random lone guy that, maybe he, hated America for some reason because he was depressed, and who knows, and he could be a complete, just kind of nutty lone wolf. But just like we saw with the shooter in Butler, the attempted, the guy that attempted to assassinate President Trump, they made it look like he was this lone wolf, but he was anything but. He had all kinds of history showing that he was involved with the same locations as like some of the intel agencies, all kinds of suspicious stuff. So I happen to agree with Laura Logan that this guy, it's very, very suspicious. And again, looking at, okay, what are the kind of the themes, for America 2025, I do think that chaos is one of them. Unfortunately, I hate seeing violence. I hate this stuff. Trust me, I wish that the whole world could just be good, which I think is what we inherently want to be, except these evil satanic controllers are trying to guide people into hell. And so they're making us not good through Hollywood and through all this the insane stuff. But anyway, I just think that what's happening is that these terrorist attacks are going to be continuing. Attacks on our infrastructure. We could see grid down scenarios. We could see a lot of things. And look, I don't want to be a doomsdayer. Like I'm actually a really positive, happy guy, and I've got a very bright outlook. But I'm also very sober about the fact that large, powerful networks of criminals want America to collapse, and they don't like Americans. They don't like you and I. They don't like people that believe in the Constitution and God and the Second Amendment. And so this is, I think, part of a long-term plan to bring America to its knees, so they can then bring in a one-world government. And the kick. You know the story there. So again, keep your head on a swivel, because I think this is going to be one of the big themes of 2025. Is it's going to be, look, this is the day one. We've already got 2 terrorist attacks, right? The second one being a Tesla. So let me see, I'll find that really quickly here. So this is also interesting. So so basically a cyber truck exploded. Let me pull this up. A cyber truck exploded outside the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas, and the vehicle used in the New Orleans terror attack and this Cybertruck were rented through a car sharing app named Turo. So Elon Musk has suggested the Cybertruck was possibly loaded with a bomb. The Airbnb where the New Orleans terrorist was staying burned down just after hours after he was killed by the police. So that's interesting that the Airbnb where the guy was staying burned down just hours after he was killed by the police. Are there some ties here? Potentially, but look at this. Okay, this is a CCTV video. This is the Cybertruck sitting in front there. Now watch this. Well, actually, first I'm going to show you this. Okay, this bottom video is a video of Tesla that caught fire in a Florida garage, right? So you can see, like, this is what it looks like if an EV car catches fire. I mean, they can end up, they don't blow up. Like they can kind of have, I guess they have some, the batteries can blow up to a certain extent, but you can see though, it's a slow burn. And now this house in Florida ended up burning down because of it. Well, obviously, but you can see that it's a slow burn, and then there's some sort of explosion that might kind of follow, but it's not. It's not like someone just tosses a grenade and it blows up all of a sudden. Now, if we look though, let's see if we can. Yeah, if we look up here, let me kind of start this over again. Let's go look at the Cybertruck. Let's see a little bit more time for you. So let's look at this Cybertruck. Okay, again, watch there on the top of the screen. The truck is just sitting. It's fine. But check this out. Boom. All right, I think that they'll play it again so you can see it. There we go again. Like, to me, that looks like a bomb going off. That does not look like some random EV car going, and just burning up because the battery had some sort of issue. Now, the fact that it was a Cybertruck parked in front of a Trump property, right? So, who's at the center of this kind of MAGA movement? There's been a lot of debate and a lot of arguments over H-1B and everything, but it's Elon Musk, right? There's a lot of concern, I think rightfully so, of Elon Musk's power over U.S. politics, his influence over Trump, et cetera. But you can't ignore the fact that this is an Elon Musk. It's his kind of the main thing that he's talking about right now is this Cybertruck. This is the big Tesla thing that obviously with the Optimus robots and self-driving cars and everything, but these Cybertrucks. So a Cybertruck sitting in front of the Trump property blowing up like this makes me think this is some other form of a terror attack. Now, it might, obviously it wasn't it wasn't an attack. No one drove a Cybertruck into a crowd of 1,000 people and blew it up and took out a bunch of people like you see commonly in the Middle East with car bombs. So it wasn't like that. To me, it doesn't look like it was something that was done with the intent of harming and creating a mass casualty event. But this is a communication like this. They're saying something. Whoever was behind this they're saying, to me, the message I get from this is, hey, Elon and Trump, watch out, right? Elon and Trump, watch out. So as much as let's talk about Elon before the H-1B debate, he really had become this conservative hero. He was the dark MAGA. He was a person that, I'd say done a lot of good things, opening up free speech. I mean, there's some great things that he's done. But if you look at what's going on here, I would say that this is definitely some sort of something of them people saying, look, like this is it's a warning, right? It's a warning. That's the only way to make sense of it. So again, chaos, right? So we've got the fifth column, the potential terror cells being activated in America. I don't think it's going to get any better. But looking forward to, okay, so obviously that's a big thing I think that we're going to be seeing in 2025. The other thing is just Trump's inauguration, right? So Trump getting into office January 20th, this is obviously going to be a huge event, not just because it's Trump stepping into office, but because there's been so many discussions about how to stop that from happening. There's been a lot of kind of key Democrats talking about how they're not going to certify the election. There's been the lawfare. So there's been a massive movement and a massive amount of energy being put into stopping Trump from getting into office. Now, let's just say that it goes as planned. Trump inauguration happens January 20th, and then we're okay, well, now we're set. So then say January 21st, it's, Trump is officially in office. There's a lot of questions I have. I mean, I think this is honestly, this is probably in my opinion, probably the biggest story of 2025 is what's going to happen under Trump in the White House. So there has been a discussion about taxes, right? So this is again, this is a huge story for Americans because Trump has talked very openly and consistently about the idea of getting rid of income tax. So getting rid of income tax and replacing it with tariffs. Now, this opens up a whole can of worms and discussion. And it actually ties in a lot to this whole H-1B debate about people saying, look, the American public, see people like Vivek or Elon that are really standing up, really a lot of the tech guys, right? Which makes me wonder, what's really going on behind the scenes with Trump and them getting him in? And why is it that we've got Zuckerberg donating this money to the inauguration? You've got all these major, major tech CEOs and tech billionaires all coming out in support of Trump. It makes me wonder that is there kind of like a Silicon Valley great replacement strategy where they want to keep growing their tech companies. They've got all this talent from India and other countries that they want to use these H-1B visas to bring them in and replace a lot of the American workers. They're saying, oh, look, I think Vivek Ramaswamy made some comments about kind of saying that, to summarize it, that the American people aren't what they used to be, and they're getting far more hardworking and talented people coming from overseas. Now, my personal opinion on this is that I'm someone I'm very America first. I think that we should be helping our veterans. We should be helping our homeless on our streets. We should be like revamping the education system and really making it so that America is the center of greatness again. Because unfortunately we're not. And one of the reasons why is because we've taken all the skilled labor and jobs out of this country and we've sent them over to China, right? So almost everything you buy, like unfortunately, this Logitech mouse was, made in China, right? So almost everything that we're interacting with, these Apple products, this microphone I'm talking into, these are all made in China. I would love to see, though, a resurgence of bringing this back to America. And there's been a lot of debates about whether tariffs are going to work and, the ending of taxes and bringing in tariffs. I mean, that right there, right, ending income tax and kind of shifting that, that income over to tariffs, that will fundamentally transform America. Now, it could be in some bad ways, it could be in some good ways. My hope, though, is that we have the vision to stick with the plan to actually rebuild America from the ground up. Bring the factories back here. Does it mean that things are going to be more expensive? Yeah, they will be. But I actually think that a lot of ways that what's happened is that they've used cheap Chinese made products to hide the real inflation. And so it's going to be a struggle to bring manufacturing back, to bring education back to the ways it should be in America. It's going to take years to rebuild the working class of America and to train people up and get people back in the factories, but we have to do it. Like we have to do it. It's like I grew up in Ohio. My parents are from various small towns in Ohio, and one little town my mom is from is Nelsonville, this little kind of factory town down in southern Ohio that's now a ghost town. And I've seen it with so many other little towns I visited in Ohio, where these at one point were booming industrial towns that had a big factory that was manufacturing, that was supplying jobs. And what happens is that those jobs get sent overseas, the factories collapse, and the whole town's collapsed around them. And so you've got these depressing, desolate towns across all America, where the guy that at one point was providing for his family and was a sheet metal worker at the local factory is now a heroin addict because he's out of work, and it's just the downward spiral that we're seeing with the American middle class. And so I think that this is going to be one of the big things that I really hope to see happening under Trump is I would love to see, getting rid of the income tax. I'd love to see increased tariffs. I know it's going to make things more expensive, but there's going to be growing pains. Look, if you're like morbidly obese and you weigh 500 pounds because for the last 20 years, you've just wrecked your body eating whatever you want to, you're not going to get to 10% body fat and a six pack overnight. It's going to take a lot of work for you to get back into shape, but it's possible, right? And this is what I see with America. This is what I hope to see happening with America over the course of, especially under Trump in his 4 years, is I want to see America getting back into shape. I want to see us getting healthy again. And we'll talk about the Make America Healthy Again, the MAHA movement. But what I mean is healthy in terms of strong factories, jobs, people can work these jobs and support their families. I want to see this, reviving America. I want to see America go back to, I want to see America go back to the morals and values of the 40s and the 50s and the 30s, the times when I think Americans were good before we were polluted by the 60s movement, the 70s movement, the communist infiltration, the takeover of Hollywood and the seminaries and the churches and everything. Like I want to see a resurgence of patriotism and goodness coming back, which I think is going to be happening. That's one of my big things looking at the next years. I think that we will see this resurgence of patriotism and a recognition of God and virtue coming back strong again in America. But again, I hope that it's coinciding with the rebuilding of the middle class in America, the training. Trump's talked about. I think it's like the American University, and actually training people again, teaching them the real history of our country, not the New York Times, the woke kind of the BS that they're pushing out there, but the real history of America and what we stand for and what it means to be an American patriot. I'd love to see that happening. And so taxes, these are some minor change, kind of some of I could spend 12 hours talking about the changes I think Trump is going to be making over the course of the next year to 2, 3, 4 years. But again, this is one of the things I'm really going to be focusing on is what's happening with the taxes. Also, the dollar. We've got the Brics de-dollarization. They're not holding up on that. Trump has threatened 100% tariffs on any country that breaks away from the dollar. But it makes me think that is that going to work, or are we going to have a lot of countries that are just going to say, you know what? We're done with the dollar dominance. We're done with your unlimited money printing and funding your wars all over the world and your USAID and your kind of your debt slavery and all this kind of stuff that's happened. Unfortunately, I do think that we're going to see some big financial shakeups happening because I don't think that this massive BRICS movement of de-dollarization is just going to stop because Trump threatens the tariffs. I think that if anything, it might cause them to double down, and we might see hyperinflation in America. I don't want to see that, but again, if you've been following the show for a while, I've been talking about this for quite some time that the fiat currencies have life cycles. So the dollar is a fiat currency. Ever since it got pulled off the gold standard, it is a fiat currency. They can print unlimited money, basically, and it's why we're over $30 trillion in debt. But this is going to be a big shift. Now, I mentioned Make America Healthy Again, right? So the whole MAHA movement, this is one of the big stories that I'm focused on in 2025, because if you've been following the show, I have been covering a lot about big pharma, the medical industrial complex, the origins of the Rockefeller medicine, the demonization of all the traditional ways of healing ourselves, the herbs, the natural treatments like Laetrile, B17, apricot seeds, as one minor thing. But I want to see a massive shift happening in American health. And again, politicians are the best at making promises that they don't keep. So we've had RFK Jr., we've had Trump. A lot of the health folks are making a lot of big promises. But what I want to see is a real investigation into the COVID jab. I want to see justice, being brought for that. I want to see Operation Warp Speed finally have the veil ripped off of it so everyone can see it for what it is, as much as it's going to bruise Trump's ego, or maybe he sees this coming already. But unfortunately, if I see 4 years of Trump and I don't see any acknowledgement of what the reality of Operation Warp Speed was, then it will be the final thing that convinces me, you know what? This is kind of a lost hope, right? Because if we can't talk about this, if we can't talk about what Operation Warp Speed did to the world and what it did to the American people, and the fact that I've got family members that are like having major issues with their heart, that have heart attacks at young ages, et cetera. Now I'm on YouTube, so I can't go too into detail because they're going to cut the feed for you. But again, I want to see true justice with this. So Maha, Make America Healthy Again. It's a really important story for us to be focused on because I want to see these changes happening. I want to see justice. I want to see the FDA being run by American patriots that have children that they care about and not being run by former big pharma executives. So I know that again, this is one of the plans that's been outlined. They've talked a lot about it. RFK Jr. has talked a lot about this stuff. So will he actually do this? Will the Trump administration wage war on big pharma as they should and on big food and big agriculture? I certainly hope so. But I can tell you that I'm going to be really, really disappointed if what we see is a bunch of lip service and we see, oh, great, we've now banned, these red dyes from children's Fruit Loops. So your kid's not going to get autism from his Fruit Loops anymore. It's like, okay, I think that we're kind of bouncing around the real elephant in the room, which is that we need to have justice. I want to see the Vaccine Act of '86 repealed so that we can actually investigate and hold these companies actually accountable for what they're putting into our kids. I mean, there's a whole slew of things, but again, the MAHA movement, the Make America Healthy Again movement, in my opinion, is one of the most important stories that will shape the future of America. Because if you look at the trends in illnesses, childhood illnesses, autism, etc., there is something very, very wrong with our health system. And as much as closing the border and you say like getting rid of the mainstream media and all these things could be really good, if our kids are dying, if they're living to say 60 years old, or if 2/3 of them have brain or mental disorders, or if half the kids are hopped up on psychiatric meds because they're depressed, because they're of the hormonal imbalances that are caused by all the junk they're spraying in the air, putting into our foods, that's not going to be very good either. So again, Maha movement is something I'm going to be focused on very heavily this year. You're going to see a continued effort from me. I'll be interviewing doctors, interviewing frontline people that are exposing and talking about what needs to be happening. So again, Maha, Make America Healthy Again. That's a big, big thing that I'm seeing that I really, really hope is going to be making some big changes here in America. The other thing is that, as I mentioned in the beginning, is just the Great Awakening. And I think I think one of the most, maybe the most important story of 2025, not just 2025, but of our lifetimes. It's the Great Awakening. And it's not, I'm not looking at it as like, oh, some kind of online conspiracy type thing. I'm talking about the real awakening of people around the world, right? The awakening, especially of us Americans, that the realization that big pharma, big education, the media, big tech, that all of these systems that we've trusted for, some of them, a century plus, that people are seeing through this evil cabal, that they're seeing through and they're breaking away from it. Because if you look at the fundamentals of what shapes the future of our country, it's the minds and the hearts of the people in this country. And actually, I've got this book sitting here. I didn't intentionally I didn't want to show it to you, but it goes back to this book, The Crowd by Gustave Le Bon, that was written in the late 1800s, right? And there's one thing I've read it before. I'll read it again. He talks about here. This is a guy that studied what causes the rise and fall of societies, what causes mass events like the Paris Commune or any of these like massive social changes. And what he says here, let's see, he says that the destinies of nations are elaborated at present in the heart of the masses and no longer in the councils of princes. So, what he's saying in this, when he studied these movements and studied what causes a society to collapse or be successful, what causes the fall of Rome, that again, what he came to was it's the collective hearts and minds of the people that determine the fate of a nation. And so, this is why I think this is what I see as being the most important story is when I say the Great Awakening, because it is it is the hearts and minds of people across this country waking up to the truth, but not just waking up to the truth, but simultaneously rejecting evil, rejecting Netflix and Disney and Hollywood, and rejecting the modern music industry, and not letting our kids listen to this stuff, and not sending our kids off to the public indoctrination centers known as schools. It's homeschooling. It's pulling away from this system, right? And again, this is why I think this is the most important story that I'm very focused on, and that I'd like to say I've had, played some small role in, is just helping people to wake up and come together, and also to see past the party politics, see past this um, left versus right, this whole thing that, okay, well, it's the Democrats' fault. Like that's what happens every event that happens. The left blames the right blames the left. But what I think we have to do is say, okay, well, there's some good things happening with the conservative movement in terms of bringing back traditional values, et cetera. But fundamentally, that I want to see Americans rise above this. Like I would love to see that 2025 is the year where Americans can come together in a way that we haven't in a very long time, because that's the greatest threat to the cabal, is the people uniting. Because when our hearts are united, as he mentioned in that book, that's what determines the fate of the nation. And so I really, really believe that the awakening of the people around the world, and especially here in America, is the most important shift, because I'm a very spiritual person. I have a very, very strong belief in God. And my perspective with America, a lot of people, they're saying, oh, God bless America, God save America. And my perspective is that God will save America if America is worth saving. I really believe that. Like, it doesn't say in the Bible that America must, continue on for all eternity. No, America is just a blip in the life cycle of humanity. America is just as little. It's like a day old, right? So I'm not saying that America must continue, like, necessarily. Like I really believe in following whatever God's plan is, but I hope it can. Like I hope that this guy named Man in America has a country to still call America, like me podcasting from. And I've got little kids that, my children, I want to see them growing up in a good country that has the correct values. But ultimately, I believe, though, that what will save America is America itself becoming worth saving. And what I'm seeing, the trends that I'm seeing, it encourages me. It really does. And one of the big trends that I'm seeing that I think is going to shape 2025, is one of the biggest indicators of this great awakening, is the collapse of the mainstream media. This is something that we witnessed, I mean, pretty intensely over the course of the last couple of years, that the trust in the mainstream media has absolutely plummeted. Even trust in places like Fox News, which, say, 3 or 4 years ago, everyone was like, oh, you got to watch Fox News and watch Tucker and Hannity. I don't hear that at all. I'm seeing more suspicion towards any kind of centralized distribution of information than I've ever seen. And this is encouraging to me, because what we're seeing simultaneously as the mainstream media collapses is we're seeing the rise of independent journalism and independent news. I mean, shows like my own. I'm just an independent. I'm not sure if I call myself a journalist, because I'm not like writing in-depth articles on what I'm researching, but I guess you could say I'm a journalist in some sort, that I'm researching information. I'm presenting to you a narrative, and I try to be very cautious about. I'm not trying to convince you to think what I think. I'm just telling you where I'm at and how I've arrived at my own perspective and my understanding of what's happening in the world. Because I hope that on your own, you go and you do your research and you figure out what's happening. But again, this rise of places like Rumble, that, or like where I'm broadcasting, every show is on Rumble because they don't censor me on there. Twitter, though, I'm seeing some censorship happening now, especially after the H-1B debate happening. But there's been a massive opening of the public discussion. And I think this is actually the most important thing that we have to fight for, is people being able to get truthful information. That information is not bought and paid for by Pfizer, or controlled by a little memo from the FBI to Facebook to, hey, make sure you censor these particular stories with a lab leak or whatever it is. But that we're seeing more and more people that are actually seeking independent sources of information, which is, again, this is, I think, the most important story of 2025, and really continuing, because how do we make the right decisions to elect the right people or take the right actions if we don't have the true information? And so this is my, like, goal. This is my, like, life purpose right now in my life, is to try my best to bring uncensored, truthful information to you. And I might get certain things wrong. I have in the past, and if I know it's wrong, I'll tell you. I'll say, hey, look, like, I was wrong about this, and someone pointed out to me. But I'm genuinely trying to just put together information that is maybe useful to you, and helps you form your worldview, because I think we have to have this true information. But if you look again at the collapse of the mainstream media, and the rise of independent media, I think this is going to be a massive trend that we're going to see continuing. We're going to see more people starting podcasts. I've got friends and family reaching out to me and saying, Seth, can you help me get a podcast started? And I'm like, yes, how can I help you? Because we need more of this. If the narrative in our country was determined by independent journalists and researchers and people with podcasts and Substack blogs, et cetera, if the narrative was determined by them, I think that our country is going to be on the right foot. Now, of course, we have to be vigilant because it's very easy for these so-called independent, podcasters, et cetera, to be controlled. It's very easy for them to be bought out, secretly funded, without anybody knowing. Maybe they've got blackmail on them, whatever. So we still have to keep our head on a swivel and be very, very vigilant in vetting the information that we're accessing because, you don't want to just say, oh, even me, don't trust me, right? Like, do your research, second guess everything that I tell you. And if you then come back and say, you know what? I think that Seth was actually pretty right. Good. I'm glad, but never get to a point where you believe whatever I tell you just because I said it. Do your research. And that's what I'm trying to impart to you and trying to show you is how I arrive at my research, what my research is, why I believe the way that I do. Why I think these are important stories, but fundamentally, like, I want you to do your own research and take something I tell you and measure it against 3 other 4 other sources and see what you think, because like that's going to be a big part of this is that the American people, we need to learn that we can't just sit there on our couch and be spoon-fed information and expect that we're getting the truth. We have to be vigilant with our information. And so that's my purpose with the show. And so if you're watching the show, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure you're following on Rumble. I'm going to be getting my Substack going really soon, which I'm really excited about. But thank you for supporting me. Thank you for supporting me as an independent journalist and supporting the advertisers that I work with, and just leaving the comments that you leave and the kind things that you say. It gives me the motivation to keep doing this. So as we're closing out, I do have one other sponsor I want to talk to you about. This is one of the great ones that I've got a whole closet full of this stuff, is Balance of Nature. So folks, so look, every new year, we all spend a few days seriously thinking about what we can do to improve our lives. And usually it revolves around better health, right? So I want to strongly encourage you to do what I do. Take responsibility for your health by taking Balance of Nature's whole food ingredient supplements. Seriously, they're packed with 31 varieties of fruit and vegetable ingredients, from tomatoes to sweet potatoes and just about everything in between. So this is a resolution you can truly keep all year long, like I do. This is your last time to put it off, because today you can become a preferred customer at Balance of Nature. So use my discount code SETH, that's SETH, to get 35% off, free shipping, plus a free fiber and spice supplement. So this is an unbelievable limited New Year's promotion, but you must use my discount code SETH, SETH. So call 800-2468-751 and use the discount code SETH, or order online at balanceofnature.com and use promo code SETH to get 35% off plus a free fiber and spice supplement. All right, so folks, that wraps it up. This was not going to be an overly complex or long show. I wanted to hit just a handful of the key topics, the key things that I think are important for us to be focusing on. I thank you for being along with me this past year. I promise you that with my soul and my heart in front of you, I promise to you I will not sell out, that I will keep reporting what I believe is the truth. If I'm wrong, I will tell you that I'm wrong when I find the examples of it. And it's my goal. I hope that you stick with me this next year as we grow together. We've got some really ambitious goals for Man in America. We've got a lot of exciting things that we're going to be doing this year. And I would love to have you along on that ride. So if you've been watching from day one, thank you for being with me. If this is your first time, thank you. And I hope that you stick around. I hope you hit that subscribe button. So folks, take care. God bless. And I will see you again for the next show. Have a wonderful rest of New Year's Day. And I will catch you tomorrow. We do more shows for you tomorrow. So again, thank you so much for being here with me. Take care and God bless.